Welcome back to Sociotech podcast hosted under Center for Machine Learning and Big Data Analysis, LNMIT, Jaipur. I'm your host Kaustubh, and today with us we have a very special guest, Professor Nirmal Kumar Sivaraman from the LNM Institute of Information Technology. Professor Sivaraman is an esteemed scholar and an expert in social network analysis, web sciences, computational social sciences, and cognitive modeling. Welcome, sir. It's an
Thank you.
honor to have you here.
Same here.
So, before commencing with the podcast, congratulations on your work.
Thank you.
And while going through your work, the very question stuck my mind that what was your motivation behind, and like if any personal or professional reason that made you came across the topic.
Actually, the work on epidemiological models was not. We did not start working on epidemiological models in the beginning. So we started out with studying information diffusion models. So when you look at information diffusion models, it turns out that it has a lot of similarities with how epidemics spread. How information spread is somewhat similar to how viruses spread among people. So this led me to the epidemiological modeling. So whatever I wanted to model on information, I had to model first on epidemics and then apply that on information back.
Okay,
So this is how I reached into epidemics.
a jump from information to medical and then back to information.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. So you mentioned about some models. What is the difference between the models you mentioned and the you were working on?
In fact, there are many models that work on epidemics, like cascading models or herding models, um, diffusion of innovation models, and these kind of models are already there. And there are some these all of these models look at this in epidemics from a different angle. So, if you look at cascading models, for example, it looks at the whole process of epidemics from the viewpoint of one person who is getting infected
Okay.
and propagating that infection. Um, if you look at diffusion of innovation models, that has a very peculiar structure that is already established. So it assumes that the infection starts at one point, and then it goes to a set of influential people, and that those influential people spread it further. So it's like from one point to multiple hotspots, and then diffusing it to the population.
Okay.
Um, and there is one more set of models that are called compartmental models. These look at it from a population perspective. So it is like you take all the people in the population, and then you check what state are they in. For example, if we consider, um, let us say, three states. One is that the person is prone to infection. Second is that the person actually got infected, and the third is that he recovered. So once he recovers, he is not going to get infected anymore. So this is one particular, let's say, set of compartments.
Okay.
Now, if you take all the people in the population, you can put them into these three buckets neatly. So everybody in the population would fit into these buckets. And then, when an infection happens or when a recovery happens, people from one bucket will move to the other bucket.
They change in the bucket, like
Yeah, so people will
keep
move.
on shuffling from
Yeah.
one to each other.
So this movement can be modeled mathematically
Okay.
using differential equations. And for each movement, you would have such differential equations. So you would have a coupled differential equations. You will have a set of coupled differential equations. So it depends on how many buckets you would have. and there are many models with different number of buckets that would model different kinds of diseases. Some of them would say you have a recovery, uh, like chickenpox. You would recover and then you won't get it. But common cold is like you would recover, but again you would get it.
You can get it, yeah.
So these are modeled using different set of buckets. So this gives a population level perspective to the whole epidemic spread.
Okay.
So we felt that this is more appropriate for our need, and we worked upon a epidemic compartmental model called SIR model.
Okay.
Where there is susceptible, that is prone to infection, infected, and recovered. There are three buckets. But the difference or the problem with this model is that most of these compartmental models assume that the population is closed.
Okay.
And they say that, okay, you have a population here, there are infected people here, there are susceptible people, there are recovered people. Now we are starting the game. How does it change? How does the infection spread?
Okay.
So this is how compartment models work. But the problem with those models is that they are extremely sensitive to the starting point.
Okay.
So if you say that, okay, there were 10 infected people in the population of 1 million people, so then we can say it would spread, and let's say you can see it would end up at the end. But if you assume that there is no infected population in the beginning, then the infection will not start at all.
Okay.
So this is a drawback.
The source of infection is not considered in this model.
Yes.
Okay.
So when a epidemic starts, it doesn't start from within the population. It has to start from some external point. So that has to be modeled.
Okay.
And this external source need not only start the infection, it can also come up again and again during during the epidemic spread. There is one good example when there was a flu in Malaysia.
Okay.
So it was spreading through pigs.
Okay.
So now we can consider that it will spread from person to person, as well as it will spread from pigs.
Okay.
So now if you take all the population and if you don't factor in the pigs, right, you may get a different solution. You may get a different prediction.
Yes,
in
sir.
fact, at that time, 70% of those people who got infected were in direct contact with pigs.
Okay.
So that means the external infection possibility was much higher than
the internal population.
Internal spread.
Okay.
So in such cases and all, if you don't factor in the external thing, it would give us very bad predictions. So we wanted to bring in that external infection route into this spread of epidemics. So that is how we came up with this model, and this route we call it as exogenous.
Okay.
And the route of infection within the population we call it as endogenous infection.
Okay.
So endogenous infection is already taken care in SIR model.
Okay.
We add that exogenous factor. That's why we call it SIR.
Okay. So as we can see, you are the previous models take care of the individual part, and we can say that your model is equal to the previous model plus external factors which are working together and giving the adequate result.
Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned about the exogenous and endogenous, and this spread of the diseases regarding the exogenous and endogenous spread, and what is its relation with the information diffusion earlier you mentioned?
Okay, so when we spread information as well, um, especially when we have social networks,
Yes.
right? Uh, the information spread from within your social network as well as from outside media. So, for example, if you're retweeting something,
Mm.
okay, that means you have some information in Twitter, and you are putting that into Twitter again. So you have, so it is like a endogenous spread.
Okay.
So it is all within that population, nothing from external, right?
Nothing from external.
So, or else, let's say you, you know, felt motivated on a day, and you write a poetry, and you put that in Facebook.
Okay. Yes, sir.
This is external, spread of information.
This is
This is nowhere there in the Facebook community. You are putting it, or you could take from a news article, and then you are posting it, or you are, taking that information from somewhere else, and then putting it to this community. So
Okay.
this is external, and when you look at information, the exo factor is not small.
Mm.
In case of epidemics, usually exo factor is less.
Mm.
So it's like not every day somebody gets bitten by a bat.
Between
That-
the,
So, but people get infected from other people much more.
yes, sir.
But in case of information, that's not always true. So, in our analysis, what we have seen is when a large scale event is going on, right, at that time, the endogenous spread is very high
Okay.
compared to exogenous. But when there's no large scale event, let's say we are talking about travel blogs, like you go to Bangalore one day, and then you say hashtag Bangalore Diaries,
Mm.
and you put some pictures and things like that. So when you take that kind of information, they are mostly exogenous and very less endogenous in nature.
Okay. We can say that in information part there's much more of an exogenous factor than endogenous.
Maybe we can say in that way. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So like kind of it's interrelated,
Yeah.
and we can see we can see also the part where we can see in the medics that exogenous and exogenous factors are considered. If we consider, then we can predict values more approximate.
Yeah, correct. But I would say the impact of this exogenous factor is not small, even in epidemics.
Okay.
Impact would be there, even if it is a small amount of exogenous spread. It has an impact in the result. But if you look at the volume, in information, exogenous volume is considerably larger compared to epidemics.
It at this point it differs. Like we
Yes,
consider the
yes.
volume part.
Yes, yes. True.
Okay, the information and the epidemic
Yeah.
differs in this mode. You mentioned about events. So what is the correlation between the events and your work, and why this pattern is coming up?
So when a large scale event occurs, there, you can see that herding starts appearing. So when you see that, okay, there is a person who is talking, let's say there is an election that's happening as a large scale event, and for each party there would be people who would be very vocal about it, and when such people tell something, it would get a lot of traction in the social media. The best example is Shashi Tharoor.
Yes.
When he makes a comment, that gets a lot of traction in the social media, and this is typical herding behavior.
Okay.
So and herding behavior is like we have a tendency to follow others.
Follow.
This is basically to reduce our cognitive effort. So
Yes.
if you solve a problem, let me use that as so that I don't have to solve it again.
Okay.
Right? So mostly this is the reason why um, we have endogenous spread of information a lot.
Okay.
So exogenous information is more like I need to put my effort and create a content and put it,
Okay.
or if I need to find an information and put it in the network.
In the network.
Instead, if I find something, it's very easy to click a forward button
Yes, sir.
or a retweet button. So that contributes to this event thing.
Okay.
And why large scale events? Because there has to be, good number of people who are interested in the same thing for this behavior to become significant.
Okay. Same mindset matters.
Yes. So that shows up in this behavior.
So this brings me to the another question you mentioned, and like, what is the impact of a research on the public, and how it can provide to the other technologies, and like what are the factors we can have a benefit in the long run?
Um, Basically, this is an effort to continually improve. This is part of an effort to continually improve the predictions regarding epidemics. So we know the importance of prediction when it comes to epidemics, right? So we can see that whenever there is a surprise factor in a prediction,
Yes.
right, that impacts the community more.
Hmm.
So with this kind of delta improvements, we can reduce that surprise factor to a good extent.
Mhm.
So, for example, during the recent COVID pandemic, the SIR predictions were, it was predicting the peak to be later than the actual case. So that would, when if it was predicted earlier, closer to that real peak, it would have helped the medical community to, get adequately prepared for that peak.
Okay.
So it is a long journey, and this is a small step towards, reducing that kind of surprises. And also, when it comes to information diffusion, um, we have no clue how information really operates, right? So we a lot of things are happening in the information realm, like fake news. There is a spread of hate news.
Yes.
And if we want to do something about it, we need to know how actually information behaves. So how does it spread? Where should we, pitch in to do something? So these are the motivations that would, take this work forward. And then let's say we want to try to make a small difference to the community.
Okay, so we can say that there is a very vast impact we can see in the future upcoming technologies.
Hopefully so.
Okay, so that was a very insightful session of yours, and it was a very insightful session for me, and I hope it is for the audience as well. Thank you for tuning. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back with another episode in the next month. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.